Hey, welcome back again. So it is Connecting with Code Day 3 in our 2024 series. I'm Dave Fisher. I work out at Rolls-Holman.
Bob Schaefer. I'm out at Mission College in Santa Clara, California.
Cool. Tell us what we're up to today, Bob.
Yeah, today we're going to continue our sequence of logic games. If you've been following the sequence and doing them in order, you've already done Coin Collector, where we use a piggy bank to try to catch coins to reach an exact total. And as you can see from the screenshot, dodge a thief. Second day's video, we did rock, paper, scissors. The screenshot there shows a Rudolph, Frosty, and there's a Santa. In our video, we actually did a more traditional rock, paper, and scissors. And today we're doing Tic-Tac-Toe, game that you probably played since you were even younger. Draw a little grid with 9 positions. You can put either an X or an O. You alternate turns with the goal of getting 3 of the same symbol in a row. Of course, if you've gotten really good at it, you've probably gotten to the point where you always tie. If you're playing people that are also really good at it, there's turns out it's not a winnable game if both people know what they're doing, but it's a great starter game and definitely in the Mount Rushmore of logic games when you're starting out as a kid. So we're going to turn that traditional paper and pencil game of tic-tac-toe into code today.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's really fun. Like rock, scissors, paper, it's like a game you play and then you can code it. And tic-tac-toe, I can't say I played as much anymore, but whenever I was younger, it was fun to play. And definitely for some people, you can still play tic-tac-toe and occasionally get wins and losses in there. But yeah, most people end up tying these days. Let's show you a solution. This is probably going to be the most unexciting solution you've ever seen because it's tic-tac-toe, right? I'll play against Bob here. So it's a mouse-based game. It's 2 people play at the same computer. And so Bob, I'll let you go first. Where do you want to start off, Bob?
Oh, I gotta go center.
All right, so you just click and then they put an X on for the center. Little things that we're going to do in the game is if I tried to take over the center, it won't let you, right? So it tries to block that. I know that as a human, you're like, well, obviously it blocks that, but in code, you have to actually code that to do that, right? So I'll take this corner up here. I'm going to try to trick Bob.
Oh, so confused. I'm going to go ahead and take, give me the lower left corner.
Lower left, excellent.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing.
And then I've got to block Bob there, so obviously I'll take that.
I got to block Dave. Go give me top center.
Go there. And then because I want to show something, I'm going to choose to go right here with my O's. And Bob is, of course, going to say, "You fool."
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Give me the win.
So Bob got the win there. I wanted to show things. And so you'll notice that the game state now changed to the winner is X. And so if I try to keep playing, it won't let me. And so the game's just kind of in a state where it's done until you hit the green flag to start it off again, right? And I'll just let O win one here, and it says the winner is O. The other state, of course, that we're going to have to manage is tie games. So if you play it all and nobody wins, it'll just say the game is a tie. So that's the game we're building. Probably no questions about that because it's tic-tac-toe. I'm guessing everybody that's watching this video knows tic-tac-toe. What we're going to do is we're going to give you some starting code. So there's a link here to the starting code. Let me show that some and then we'll talk about code design. If you follow this link to the starting code, if you're signed in to Scratch, so you have to be signed in, there should be a big remix button here. So go and click the remix button. What that does is that makes a copy of the starting code and brings it into your account. And then I'm going to change the name up here to just say tic-tac-toe. I'll change mine to say video just because, well, that's the video we're making. Let's look a little bit about what we've got. What do we give you? The first thing you'll notice is that there's 2 sprites. And so these 2 sprites, one is the board. So the board is itself a sprite. You can kind of see that there's 2 costumes for the board. There's one that has numbers so that you can understand how we're doing things. That's just for initial planning. And then there's the final version we'll have, which is all transparent in the background. I'm going to leave mine with the numbers just because that's going to help us understand what's going on. The other sprite, it looks like it's an X, but actually it's an X or it's an O or it's a mark. It looks like right at the moment I've got it to where it's not shown, but hopefully for you, I'll make it shown right off the go. And so, you can hide it or you can show it. You can switch it to O, or you can switch it to blank. So here it is kind of like its blank status. So it starts off blank, and then when you click it, it becomes either an X or an O. That much should be hopefully pretty clear. So the first thing that we've got to do is we've got to come up with a plan, right? So everybody always wants to jump straight into writing the code. I mean, I do too. I work the same way. But we're going to need to do a little planning on this. And our planning really comes down to how do you know what's called the state of the game. So Bob, how does somebody know the state of the Tic-Tac-Toe game? What are some of the fundamental things that tell you what the state of the game is?
Yeah, when I think about states of any program or design that one is doing, and it's going to be the same here for Tic-Tac-Toe, I try to think about what is this in real life. So you'll notice that when Dave and I played, he told me, you go ahead and go first, right? And so that was the state of the game. It was my turn. That was one possible state that the game could be in, where the game is sitting there waiting patiently for me to take my turn. And then after I took my turn, the state changed. It became Dave's turn. And so now the game was sitting there patiently waiting while Dave thought about where he wanted to go to trick me, to place his mark. And so once he did that, it alternated back to me. So at the beginning of a tic-tac-toe game, to answer Dave's question, the state you're in is, what is the game doing? And it sounds like a weird question because when you're playing on paper, the paper's sitting there, but the game has an idea of whose turn it is, right? Any board game you play, it's someone's turn, and then it rotates to another person's turn. Tic-tac-toe is the same way. And you'll notice when Dave got to the victory, the game state changed to say the winner is X. So that's, in this case, a third state that we've encountered. So it alternated back and forth between X's turn, O's turn, X's turn, O's turn. But as soon as a player won, that went to a new state, because now, as Dave said, there's a winner, and when he tries to click things, nothing happens. You don't continue drawing. Well, maybe if you're my daughters, you want to, I also want to win, you'll add an O even though the game's over. But realistically, once X wins, that's the end of the game. That's the game state. Game is over. X is the winner. So you can think about, there's two other states. If you want to pause the video and kind of think about what those other states might be, feel free. If you paused or not. The other two states, the other player could have won. The winner's O. And what we said at the beginning, the most common scenario is the game's tied. The game finished, and it ended in a tie. So we know as humans when we play the game what state it is because we're keeping track of it. And for the code, we need the code to keep track of it.
Cool. Thanks, Bob. I always love getting the lowdown from Bob. It goes well. So, yeah, this game, I think of it as like being in two states because it's like X or O. But really, they're five, right? So there's these five states. And so whenever we're doing something, we've got to figure out which of the five states am I in right now and how do I want to handle that. There's another thing is this is like more subtle. It's a hidden variable here. Let me show you another thing that's happening here. There's another variable which is new for us. It's a list. The word list is sometimes used in coding. It's also sometimes called an array. So a list or an array. So we've done variables, and we're going to do variable again here. We're going to do a variable called game state, obviously. And then we're going to have a new variable, which is actually a list or an array of 9 things. Now, this is probably not surprising to you. These 9 things are the 9 individual squares of the board. Let me show you how it's kind of laid out. So when Bob takes that, I'll tell you what, I'll pretend like Bob goes in the upper left because it'll be easier. When he puts an X there, it changes the game state variable, which you see here. It also, under the hood, changes this marks thing. Now, just because I hide it or I show it, that doesn't matter, right? It's just a matter of whether we can easily see it or not. I'm going to put it to where we can see it. And then when O goes, it actually displays it on the board, and then it also updates this array with the appropriate thing. Now, just to see if you have got in your head how this game works, if I were to click right here, where would it show up on the marks? So this is number 1. This is number 2. And that other board, I think, shows this better. Maybe I'll switch to the other board. So this, oops, not on there. This board shows it better. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so where this spot right here would show up is actually in the number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I click here, this is going to be 6. And then this information can be used to figure out if somebody wins. So obviously, whenever I click here, that's going to figure out that it's a win because of some code we're going to write. Now, maybe you just saw, hey, checking for a win is going to actually be kind of hard. So we're going to write some complex code. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The way that you write complex code, though, is in small steps. So our first step is just going to be about these states. And so our first real goal is we want to make this array called marks. We're going to show you how to make an array. So that's going to be step number 1. And then our next thing is we just want to make sure every time you click that it updates that array correctly. And to be honest, that's how you solve big problems. You kind of put out from your brain about checking for wins for now. Like future Dave and future Bob will have to worry about that. But right now I just have one goal. My goal is to make this marks array. So you'll notice that whenever I click new game, it makes it all blank. So that's going to be our first goal, to make an empty array. And then whenever I click, I want it to populate the correct spot in that marks array. And so that's all we care about right now. Sound good, Bob?
Yeah, no, it sounds great. And I wanted to add really quick that this array or this list that Dave was talking about, it's a tool of convenience. It would be possible to write this code with 9 separate variables, one for position 1, one for position 2, one for position 3, but the code for that would get annoyingly long and tedious.
Yep.
An array or a list allows you to refer to multiple things that you care about from the same name and then just tell it the number that you want to talk about. So marks 1 would be that first spot. Marks 9 would be the bottom spot. And so you can write somewhat generic code or general code and then specify based on the number that you're referring to. So it's a tool that programmers use to really simplify their approach. Otherwise, you would end up with these even longer pieces of code to do things.
Cool. All right, so let's go in. There will be some new syntax with arrays, so don't feel bad. Whenever you're learning something for the first time, you honestly, you just have to do it once, and then later we'll figure out how to like expand and make it new things. So go to your starting code, click on the board. It's confusing because the board has no code, and then this X has no code, but you can tell which one you're on by the outline here. So go to the board, go to the code, and then go to variables. Now what you're going to discover is that we've already made the variables for you. For better or worse, I don't know why I bothered making for you, but I did. We've got a variable called game state that's written in camel case, by the way. I don't know why I did that, but some coders use that for variables, and so it's in camel case. That's where instead of spaces, you just use capital letters. Yeah, that's why I did it. It's fine. And so that's a regular variable. That's going to be our string, which is going to be in one of these 5 string states, right? And then the other variable is this list or this array. I say both words because some people say list, some people say array. And so what we want to do is our first thing, when I hit the green flag, I want it to start off with 9 empty spots. So I'll just kind of show you in the solution here. When I hit the green flag there, you can see that it kind of like flashed and went away. And then it made these 9 spots that are all just a little hyphen for right now. So that's our first goal. So I'm on the board. I want that to happen when the green flag is clicked. And so we start with our best friend, the event when green flag clicked. So that's pretty straightforward. What happens when the green flag is clicked? So I'm going to go into the variables area and I'm going to find some new functions. You'll notice that with the regular variables, the ones we're used to, there's a set and a change, and then there's whether you show it or not, right? And that's it. That's very simple. But with a list, there's actually quite a few different things that are going on here. So what do we want to do first? So I'm going to go ahead and start off with this command. delete all of marks. Now, I always debate about doing this. I think I probably made Bob mad by doing this. I'm putting this in to fix a problem. The problem is going to be that if you play the game again, you actually want to make sure you clear off the old game first, right? So I'm going to start off by clearing off the old game. The next thing I want to do is I want to add a thing to marks. Now, the thing I'm going to add is just a hyphen. So if I were to run this game, you can see that I click the flag and it makes 1. If I click it again, it makes another one. If I didn't have this delete marks, then every time I click the flag, it would make another one, right? Which would be no good. So I'm going to delete and then make 1. And obviously I want to make 9 of them. Bob, what do you think we should do? Should we add 9 to the same line of code, or should we make a loop?
That'd be one way to do it, one at a time. But yeah, I think, and I'm not sure if we've done this in our previous 2 videos in this sequence, but there's going to be a nice little loop up above, repeat, that's going to help you do something a certain number of times. In a typed programming language, you'll often hear this called a for loop, but here in Scratch, it's a repeat. So Dave's going to be able to go find that exact control thing.
Totally could make 9 of them. That'd be fine. Yeah. But I don't want to, right? I mean, if I ran this, I'm up to 3, but I don't want to. Instead, what I want to do is, so Bob knows the names right on the money. I'm impressed with your Scratch knowledge. It's called repeat, and it defaults to the number 10. And what I want to do is I want to make sure to only put the add inside the belly of this thing, right? So notice that the delete should only happen once in advance. And then the thing I repeat is this add hyphen. So I went ahead and dropped that in there. By the way, I was very good about how I dropped it in. But if you drop it in the wrong place, let's say you swallow both of them, no big deal. You just have to move delete up there. You try to do it and they're kind of connected, and then you try to get this one loose. If you ever have problems, just break them all apart and then just kind of put them in one at a time, right? Mm-hmm. But you'll get good at using the Scratch editor over time. And of course, this 10, I just want this to be a 9. Great. And so now whenever I hit the green flag, you can see that it makes my list, and it makes it with 9 hyphens, which is pretty sweet. Great. So phase 1 complete, making this marks list. So we're in good shape there. Phase number 2. Phase number 2 is that we want to, when we click a spot, we want to put in an X or an O in the correct spot. Now, this is going to happen over on the other sprite. This other sprite is called location 1. So you can see that right now there's an X in this location 1 sprite. We're going to get the game kind of sort of working with just one location, and then we're going to mass produce it to where we actually have 9 locations. We could do it with clones, but in this game, since there's so many difficult things happening, we're going to do it without clones. So if you know what clones are, I guess you do from Coin Collector, you know clones. But we're going to do this one with no clones. We're just going to get the code right, and then we're going to make 9 copies of it, which can be dangerous, but we decided that it's going to help us this time. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with this X. The first question is, Bob, what costume should this thing start in? Should it start in X?
We played our game. Everything looked blank to me.
Yep. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get a when green flag clicked. And what we want to do is we want to switch the costume. So I'm going to go up to looks, and I'm going to go to switch costume to, it's even set to the right value, switch costume to blank. So when I hit the green flag, it should throw up a blank square. Cool, and it covered it over quite nicely there. By the way, that's the same thing that this version does. Everybody, when you hit the green flag, they go back to blank, right? And blank, by the way, you can see because it's kind of like a gray box, right? So it's actually, you can still see it. Great, so that's a good start. The next thing we want to do is we want to do something if I am clicked, right? So if I'm clicked, I want to do something. That's a different event, which is nice. So you can go back to events, and you can say when this sprite is clicked. And I'll just drop it right here. So when this sprite is clicked, we're going to do something. And the thing that we're going to do is we're going to, if it's X's turn, we're going to put an X here. Like we're going to change our costume to an X. And we're going to update that marks array. If it's O's turn, similar but different, we're going to put an O here and update that marks array with an O. If it's any other of the game states, like if it's somebody's won already, we're just going to ignore it, right? So the first thing I've got to know is when I'm clicked, what is the game state? And so I'm going to have some if statements. So I'm going to have an if statement for when it is X's turn. And then I'm going to have a second if statement for when it's O's turn. They're actually going to be so similar that I'm going to end up deleting the second one, but I'm just kind of laying out the structure for now. Think everybody's good, Bob? Do they understand what we're up to?
Hope so.
So how do we know if the game state is X? So we need a comparator. We need to see if the game state variable equals the letter X. The comparator that I'm looking for is in operators. It's just an equals symbol. Cool, there's an equal symbol. And the thing I want to compare is I want to compare the variable game state to the value X. So I just typed a capital X on my keyboard. Right now the game state doesn't really change, but we're going to manually change it some just so we can do some testing, right? So if the game state is X, which it is currently X, then this code's going to do stuff. The things that it's going to do. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to change the looks. It's going to switch the costume to be an X. So make it to be an X. You notice that here I used an uppercase X. Here I used a lowercase X. I kind of wished I'd made them all uppercase, but that's okay. This name of the costume doesn't really matter. But this uppercase X, I am going to be consistent throughout to make all those uppercase. All right, so if I hit go here, right now, if I click this sprite, it should switch to an X, which is kind of cool. So the green flag will put it back. Clicking here will make it an X. So that's good. You'll notice that the marks array did not change yet, though, so I still need to do that. So if I clear it off, it clears it off there, and when I click it, it's going to change this and that. So let's figure out how do we change that marks array. That's going to be over in variables. So there's all these commands with arrays, and what we want to do is we want to set a certain spot, like based on my location. So we want to set a certain thing. We want to change it to be X or O. And there's this one right here, replace item. So I'm going to grab this replace item, and I'm going to bring it into my code. And whenever they click on this X, which is location 1, I want to replace item 1. So this we're going to change for all the others, but it's actually a 1 for right now because I'm in spot 1. And we're going to change it to be X. Excuse me. So if I run this, when I click here, it becomes an X. Cool. Need a drink, Bob?
Sure. A little timeout.
We've only got 10 minutes left today. I got to go pick up Keegan. I got a text message while we were recording that said track was canceled.
No.
So I was going to have the same thing we did last week, and I was like, oh, awesome, we'll just be able to plug through again. But if I've got to get Keegan, then I've got to leave here at about 3 o'clock or so. So unfortunately, that's going to cut our time today, but oh well.
Well, it's all good.
I think we're done. Let's see here. The next thing I'm going to want to do, I didn't plan this out very well, but I'm going to want to set the game state to be O so that we can test with O as well. So that would be the only thing that we do next.
You had mentioned that you wanted X. You wish you had made it also capital.
Yeah.
Do you want to actually talk them through how to do that, or do you care?
Nah, I think that I shouldn't have even mentioned it, and I should have just plugged on. But yeah, no, I don't. I don't think that we need to. I don't think we need to do that.
Okay.
Oh shoot! Yeah, the other thing that I should do is I should only do this if the costume is blank. All right. So I left off something, but it's okay.
I think that's one of those that you can kind of realize and then add afterwards. Like, oh, this is a problem. We should only be doing this, and then kind of fix it later.
Cool. Maybe I'll make it come up in what we're about to do. So, like, as soon as we see it's a problem, we'll fix it. But we definitely want to fix it before we finish. Oh, and this is the very complicated solution. But yeah, this one has it as well. All right, so yeah, good pause actually, because I would have not thought to have done that. All right, ready to get going again?
Sure.
All right, so the next thing I want to do is I'd like to test with O. I have a little problem here because the game state doesn't change yet, but you can do this trick. I'll just kind of show it to you, where you just do testing things. So do this for me. Go into the variables area and just grab where it says set game state to 0. This is kind of funny, but what we want is not a 0. What we want is a capital letter O. And you can actually put one on here for X as well. I just kind of separated them. And then what you can do to run code is you can actually just double click on it. And so see how that changed my value up there. And so things like this are good for testing. So that you can just manually change the value. So I just thought that was kind of neat. All right, so let's go ahead and fix it to where if it's O's turn, we do a similar but different thing. And so what I'm going to do is, obviously I could bring in all these commands again down here, but I'm going to do something funny. Instead, I'm going to take this and throw it in the trash. Throw it in the trash just by going over here. And I'm going to right click right where it says if. If you're on a Chromebook, it's a 2-finger click, but I'm going to right click or 2-finger click and say duplicate. Now what duplicate does, which is nice, is it just makes a copy of the code, right? So I'm going to stick it down here. Now the reason I did that is because it's going to make it way easier to write O's code. So if the game state is a capital letter O, make sure you type, like hold down shift and hit the O letter. It looks a lot like a 0. By the way, Bob, that never fails to annoy me that we choose the number 0 and the letter O, and they look the same to my eyes, right? But that's okay. If it's O's turn, then I want to set the costume to O, and I want to replace marks with a capital letter O. Cool, so I think I got it. All right, so what I want to do now is test it. So if I hit the green flag, it should reset. If it's O's turn, so I can click right here and make it be O's turn, then when I click this, it should do 2 things. It should put in an O, which is great, and it should put into the marks over here an O turn. Try it again with X, so I hit the green flag. I put it to X's turn, so I double clicked on this just to run it. And then when I click here, it puts in an X. Now there is a little bug, it's a subtle bug, and the subtle bug is this. After we put in the X, our code, which we have not written yet, is going to switch it to be O's turn. So I'm just going to do that manually just by changing it here. Now that it's O's turn, check out what I can do. If I click on this spot, which clearly X is in, I can take it over. Woo, I just took it over. So wouldn't that be a fun game of Tic-Tac-Toe to play? And the reason I can take it over is if you look at my code, there's nothing stopping me from taking it over, right? If it's X's turn, put an X. If it's O's turn, put an O. It seemed perfectly logical when I wrote it, but now I realize that it's got a bug. And the bug is that you can only take a square if it's empty, right? You can't take a square if it's full. So a fix to this bug is we're going to have to put in an if statement. And so what we want to do is this whole code we wrote, everything in here, we want to wrap it all in an if statement. So I'm going to go into control and I'm going to find an if statement. Now, if I'm able to, I would like to swallow, like when I drop it, I like to swallow. Yeah, I totally can do it. I want to swallow both of these if statements inside of another if statement. All right, so I think I've got mine where I want it, so I'm going to drop it there. And I could go through and mess it up and fix it, but hopefully you're able to do some of those things. Now, how do I check to see if it is in fact empty? So there's a couple ways you could do it. But what I'm going to do is, see what I did here where I switched the costume to blank to start with? I'm going to see if the costume is currently blank. And if it is currently blank, then I'm going to do stuff. So I'm going to use my operator for equals. So here's my equals operator. And then how do you know what costume you're in? Well, you go into looks and you see if there's a command that can help you. So I want to know what costume I'm in. It's like a question I'm going to ask. It actually turns out that this one right here can help you if the costume number is something. So I'll go ahead and grab this. I'm going to drop it right in there. You'll notice that you can use either the costume number or the costume name. I think in the solution I used a number, but I think it'd be fun to see if there's a way to use just the word blank. So if you want to show them how to see this, they can click on the costumes right now, and you can literally see the names of each of these. Right? There's an X, there's an O. It's the spot on the bottom, and it's also under costume, and then blank. And he could, if he wanted to make sure it was the same in that field where it says costume, he could go and copy and paste that word, whatever it is, and put it right in there, and then you guarantee it's exactly the same. Cool. So this is a little scary for me because in my solution, I actually did use costume number 3 because you can also refer to them by number 1, 2, and 3. And so this will be the first time we try it. So cross your fingers for me. I'm going to hit the green flag, and I'm going to click on right here. It worked, and it came in as O. If I switch it to X,
and now to really test it, can you change it to X?
It won't let me. Super.
And that was the goal.
Cool. So that was the goal. So it's protection that you can't take over a square. So if somebody else has got the square, you can't just take it over. Cool. So I'm actually pretty happy with this code that I've got so far. These two, like changing the game states, these were just for testing, right? So I'm going to put it back to X. So I'm just going to double click on X. And now I'm kind of done with these two. They were just temporary. So I'm just going to take this one and drop it over here. So that was just so I could test. And I'm going to take this one and I'm going to drop it over here because I don't need that test anymore. So we're almost ready to mass produce. There's just one thing that I'm going to do before we mass produce. And I'm going to cheat a little bit here and just tell you something that you should do. What you should do is you should shout, "Hey, check to see if the game is over," right? So that's your job. That's the end of your responsibility. So we're just going to shout that, "Hey, check to see if the game is over," and then they'll mass produce after that. What we want an event, and we're going to broadcast is what it is. And the place where I want to put the broadcast is actually right here, barely inside the if statement. So I don't care if it changed to an X or an O. That doesn't matter to me. I want to scream in either case. I want to broadcast, and I'm going to type in a new message, check for win. You can do it in any case that you want. I'm just going to put on check for win. Cool. So I think we are ready to start mass producing. Sound good?
Sounds good. Yeah, and this broadcast is actually something that we used in a previous game. It's often used within Scratch to let the other sprites within the program know that an event has occurred and that they need to check for something or look for something or respond in some certain way.
All right, let's do some mass producing. Location 1 is good to go. And we want to basically make it just like that, but in a different spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the sprite and I'm going to say duplicate. Now when you duplicate it, it'll call it location 2, which is great. It won't change the code and it'll just kind of put it in a new spot. I clicked on it there and it changed to an X. I'm not quite sure why there, but that's okay. I'm going to get it roughly in the right position. And then to make it exactly in the right position, it should just be a nice rounded to the nearest 100. Should be exactly where it goes. Cool. So that's location 2. The other thing I want to fix is I want to change this replace item. So I'm putting things in the array 1 with a 2. And right here, this replace item 1, I want to actually replace item 2. Let's check it just so we can try it. So if I hit the green flag, it levels everybody out back to blank. If I click this one, it puts an X in. We're not changing whose turn it is right now, so it's still X's turn. So if I click here, it should be X's turn as well. And you can see that it put the 1 and this first one into the 1 spot, and then this one goes into the 2 spot. Cool. And if I were to switch this to O's turn, it should show O's turn. I'll just accept that works. All right, I'm going to crank this out. I'm going to duplicate it again. I'm going to put it about there. I'm going to round it to the nearest 100. I'm going to let you watch me a couple times. And so I do that, round to the nearest 100. Then I change this to 3 and 3. And then I'll duplicate it for number 4. You can see where number 4 goes right there. Oh, man, look at that. I nailed it, Bob. And I need to change this. Whoa!
Oh.
Change that.
So that might happen. 4. A couple things you could do. You could just slide it back into place, or I believe you can undo a change like that.
That's right, yeah. So I hit Control Z to undo that one. Let's see here. So this one is, oh man, I only missed it by 1 pixel.
1 pixel.
5 there. About halfway down, I'm going to do a reality check. So this puts it into 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Great. Let's keep on cruising. Oops. I meant to right click down here. It's like I was right clicking up there and I wouldn't do anything. This is making me crazy. Alright, 105 goes to 100, 2 goes to 0, this goes to 6 and 6. By the way, we could also do this with clones, but it added complications, so Bob and I decided to do it this way. There's a version that uses clones that we could show you, but this was a little bit easier for as complex things as we've got going on. Don't worry, there will be some complexity coming, because somehow or another you've got to determine if this game is won. All right, I'm almost there. 8. I'm sure you work at a slower pace than me, and that is fine. And there's number 9. Just pause the video as you need. You can see that they all follow the same pattern. You get the numbers cleaned up, and you change the replace item to the right thing. Going to check the whole thing. So there's an X, X, and then so 3 should be there. 4 goes there. 5, 6. Scroll down some, and I do 7, 8, and 9. Cool, good deal.
Perfect. Well done.
I think what I would like to do is make some of them come in as O's. So I'm firing everybody, all these locations are setting their mark, and then they're firing a broadcast to check for win. They're screaming it, check for win, but nobody's listening. Let's go over to the board, and let's move Bob and I out of the way. And let's listen for the check for a win here. So in the same way that you can listen for the check flag event, you can also listen for your own custom events. It's in events, and it's this one right here, when I receive. So when I receive check for win, we've got to do some stuff. The main thing we've got to do is we've got to figure out what the game state is. So the game state could be X, it could be O, or it could be that somebody's already won, right? And so we need to, check for things. Let's start with the basics. Let's start with, there's the solution. You can see where we're heading. Yikes. Let's start with the basics and do if the game state is equal to, so I'm going to grab this equalities operator. The variable that I want is game state. So if the game state is equal to X, I'm just going to type the capital letter X. Note that it's important to be consistent when you do these things. So I'm going to always use capital X and capital O. And so if the game state is that, real simple, I'm going to set the game state to, does that look like an O to you, Bob?
It's like a 0.
Yeah, that's
I know it's really subtle, but I think the O is slightly wider.
Yeah, I know. Doesn't that kill you? So, all right, delete the 0, the number 0, and hold down Shift and type a capital letter O.
Yeah, looks a little more circular.
Next thing.
So to be clear, we've called this broadcast check for win, but what Dave's doing right now is actually what's going to happen if we check for win and the game's not over. He's setting it up to alternate to the other person's turn. So it might seem a little awkward that this is happening in Check for Win, but the Check for Win is the broadcast that I moved. The next stuff needs to happen. And Check for Win is coming, but then if there's not a win case, this is what has to happen. And it's also a great way to kind of double check that the game's going to work well before we throw in that tedious code to look for the actual victory.
Yeah, we maybe should have named the event something different, because really it's not just Check for Win. It's like end of my turn, prep for the next
taken.
turn. Yeah, something like that. All right, so if I were to play now, by the way, I always like to do this, like playing when your code is only half done, just to make sure you understand what happens. So right now it's X's turn, so I click it, and it puts an X in there. And then when I click somewhere else, it should put an O in there, which is neat. You can see my 8 behind it. We'll fix that later. But there's no code to go back, so it's forever O's turn. So it's just kind of a neat thing to do. You cannot take an already taken spot. All right, let's keep going. I'm going to actually duplicate this. I'm going to right-click right by the word if. If you're on a Chromebook, you have to 2-finger click on the trackpad. That's just how you right-click with trackpad. And I'm going to grab the other version. So I'm going to check for a capital letter O. Try to say that as clearly as I can. If that happens, I'm going to change it to a capital letter X. Now with this, you could actually play a pretty good game of tic-tac-toe. It's just that you would be responsible for checking for a win, right? And so if... that did not work. I did something wrong, Bob. So it's always X's turn. I'm not quite sure what I did, to be honest. Oh!
Well, you do the if right after the other if, so this is a fun one that normally happens. Go ahead and leave it there for a second, Dave. So if the viewers are watching, imagine this in this order. You check for a win. If game state is X, it sets the game state to O, and then it immediately checks to see if game state is O, and of course it is.
Of course it is.
Because it just changed it to O if it was X, and if it wasn't X, it was already O. So yeah, you kind of fell for a standard. I'm wondering. I'm pretty sure there might be an if else.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Inside of Scratch.
I totally did not plan that. I walked right into that.
No,
so
that's great though.
You've got to be really careful about this goof, right? Because if it falls into this state, then it guarantees it's going to fall into that state. And so what you've got to do is you've got to use what's called an if-else plan. This is one place where text-based coding is better. There's a command you can use that makes sure it's just called an if-else. But in Scratch, we don't really have a good if-else, which is okay. But we can kind of replicate it. So here's what I'm going to do. If it's X, then I set it to X. And then if it's X, you can see that it'll do this, and then it would just leap to the bottom. And then I'm going to take this and put it inside this one. So this is effectively making what text-based code have. It's what's called an else if. I guess I said the order of the words later. So you can read it like this. If this is true, then do this. Else if this is true, do this. And it'll do either this, or if it's O, it'll do this, but there's no risk of it doing both. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's protected now, because if game state is X, it'll change the game state to O, and then that entire block is exited.
Yep.
It will not check if game state is O unless game state was not X at the beginning. So Dave's effectively cleaned up the code and done it correctly.
Cool. So as you can see, there's no checking for win. So after you win, you just keep right on a plan. To be honest, humans can check for wins pretty easily. And so you can see that that's an easy fix. Another goof that I just noticed is I don't make sure that the game starts with X as the turn. So notice how it's O's turn and I hit the green flag. It just starts as O's turn in the next round. So we probably want to fix that too, just all these little things that come up. You can decide where to put that. Maybe I'll just stick it in here. I'll just set the game state to capital X to start with. And so now if I hit the green flag, it'll just always be X's turn. So if it's O's turn, I hit the green flag, it'll reset and it'll go back to X's turn. Great. I'm really happy about this. The only thing that I want to change is I want to be able to mark wins. Now, you might be running out of steam, and so I'll let you self-select. If you're running out of steam with this project, I mean, you can see we took a break. You could call the project done right here, and I wouldn't fault you for it, right? The only thing that you might want to do is the board has 2 costumes. You might want to switch to this costume that has no numbers on it. That way, when you play, there won't be like numbers that show up behind you. So if you want to be done right here, that's fine, because as a human, you can see the next one. I want to keep going. Bob, you ready to keep going?
Yeah, I've got to punch it through. I like a game that tells me when it's done.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to check for wins before we switch the game state. We could check for the game state first, but I actually want to use that game state to help me check for wins. So I'm going to temporarily disconnect those because I'm going to put some more code into here. So how do you check for a win? Well, essentially, you can check to see if an entire row is the same. So I'm going to show, actually I'll show here. If 1, 2, and 3 are all like set equal to the game state, like if those are all the same, that means that that player just won. So whatever that mark is, that player just won. And we know, based on the game state, we know who just went. So like if it's X's turn and X clicks, we know it's X's turn. So we can check, hey, if all of those are equal to X, then we know that X just was the winner. So let's do just that one style of win, and then we'll kind of go from there. So let's go into here. So here's what I want to check for. It's going to be this giant if statement. So if some condition is true, I'll tell her to do the inside first. So if the condition is true, then we want to set the game state to say the winner is like X in this case, so whoever just went. To do that, we're going to use a join operator. Join is over in the green area. You can pause it if you need it. And I'm going to say the winner is, oops, in English preferably. The winner is, and I'm going to type a space after my S here. And I'm going to say the winner is game state, because it's either currently X or currently O. So that's
this is a weird one where we're changing the variable game state based on game state's current value, which is kind of trippy. Mm-hmm. We're setting game state equal to the winner is whatever game state was right before we change it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I love it. This is a complex one. All right, the next thing we want to do is we want to make this if statement. There's going to be multiple parts to it, and so we're going to have to use this AND operator. In fact, we want to know if this is equal to the game state, and this is equal to the game state, and this is, so there's 3. You'll notice that there is no 3 ands, but check this out. If I take 2 ands, and I just put one inside the other, and then you effectively make a 3 conditional statement. Cool, and then you can build it out here, or you can drop it in here. Now we've got to make these 3 conditions. These 3 conditions are going to be 3 equal signs. And so what we're checking is we're checking to see if those are all equal to the game state. So I'm going to go into variables. I'm going to grab game state, game state, game state. So if X just went, and those are all X, then I know that X was the victor. The place where I'm going to get those X's is from this marks array over here. So inside of marks, we need to get a certain item. So I'm going to say item 1 of marks, mm-hmm. Item 2 of marks, and then I'm going to say item 3 of marks. It's getting complex in a hurry. Now these need to go into those 3 spots. The best way to do it is to grab it by the equal symbol. That's kind of like grabbing it by the middle. And then go in until the left edge is in there. So you can see with that white thing when it's going to drop in nicely. So there's the first one in. Grab this one by the equals and drop it there. Zoom out a little bit.
I was going to say this is going to require a serious zoom.
Grab that by the equals and drop it in there. All right.
There we go.
And then just for the sake of testing, I'm going to stick this back on the bottom. Obviously, I've got to check for a lot more directions, but I should be able to win with either X or O right across the top, those indices 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to let X try to win one. Cool. You can see it says the winner is X.
Changed.
And then once the winner is X, you can't click anywhere else because we're in a game state that doesn't alternate anymore. Let's go ahead and have O win one. So O's up there, O's up there, and then O's up there. The winner is O. Cool. And then you can't click anymore. All right. Here
Surprisingly, we're dangerously close to being done, but it's going to require quite a bit of copy, paste, edit, copy, paste, edit.
Let's talk about how many ways you can win. So going across, there's 1, 2, 3. Going up and down, there's 1, 2, 3. And then with the diagonals, there's 1 and 2. So it should have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different directions you can win. So we're going to have to create 8 different of these giant monster statements. So this would be great. So here's the way I'm going to do it. I'm, of course, going to duplicate. So I'm going to right-click right on the word if and say duplicate. And so now I've got another copy here. It's the same as the first one, but that's okay. I'll change it later. Now I've got 2. Now check this out. If I right-click on this top if and say duplicate, it'll actually give me 2 more. So I'll put them on there. And then I want 4 more total, so I can just right-click on the top if again, say duplicate again, and now it's giving me, I've got to zoom out a little bit here. It's giving me 4 more. So I should be able to have all 8 things. All right, now I've got my 8 if statements. I've just got to set them to the right things. So 1, 2, 3 is a way. 4, 5, 6 is the next. So I just change it to 4, 5, and 6. I don't know if the video quality is good enough to where you can even see that. Maybe I'll make this a little smaller and zoom in some. But I did 4, 5, 6. And then I can kind of pick up the pattern for this. This is going to be 7, 8, 9. Those are pretty easy.
And now if you just look at that code, those 3 lines, you actually have the pattern of the board. You could actually not have to go back and forth to the board
that's true.
anymore.
I love
you can just look at...
So I need 1, 4, 7. So 1, 4, 7. And then I need 2, 5, 8. 2, 5, 8. Okay. And then I need 3, 6, and 9. Where was I? 3...
yeah, you're good.
6. You're going to need somebody to look over your shoulder for work like this. And then I need the diagonals. So the first diagonal is 1, 5, 9. So let's hear 1, 5, 9. And then the other diagonal, and order doesn't matter. So I could put it in as 3, 5, 7 or 7, 5, 3. It doesn't matter. I think I'm going to do 3, 5, and 7. Cool. So, winning should now be working. Let's do a little testing, maybe not exhaustive testing, but we'll do a little testing. Also, just because it bugs me, I'm going to switch the board to the transparent background version. All right, so let's just try a couple. So there's an X diagonal win, check. I'll do an O diagonal win. Yep. I'll do a X, horizontal on the bottom win. That was a goof. Great. I'll do a O down the middle win. These are some terrible games of tic-tac-toe. But I think that I'm doing pretty good. Maybe we'll do an X down this side win. Cool. And then after they win, you can't click. I'm loving it. Let's do some more stuff. First thing I feel like doing is let's hide this, these variables, just because I don't really want to see it. If you remember, just like any variable, you can hide the marks, so it'll just hide that. I do want to show the game state, because that's how I show whether somebody's won or not. There's one more thing that we've got to do. So it's like almost done. So here's the last little bit. If you play every piece, so I'm getting ready to play an X piece here, but it's not going to be a win. So if I play this, so it's X's turn, then it will just say it's O's turn. Good luck, O. So this is a really subtle thing. And so what you have to think about is where in the code does this happen? So there was no winner. So all these 8 if statements were done. And so I'm just going to take it back. We're just going to kind of see where this happens. All right, so right here is where we're at. So we're in game states X. So I'm getting ready to put in this last piece. And so the moment I put in this last piece, the game state is still X. And so I want to put a check in right here. So I know that this is kind of a weird thing. You might just, might be a time where I just say, trust me. So if, I'm going to drop it in right there. So if I set it to O's turn, so this is the moment where I set it to O's turn, but there's no place left to go, then this is where we want to call it a tie game. So I just made it O's turn. It was the very last one. And so right here is where I want to put this check. And the way we're going to check is we're going to use a special thing. I think it's contains. I might need to look at the solution because I don't use it as much either. Yeah, marks contains a hyphen. All right, I'll go back to this. So when we started the game, maybe I shouldn't have hidden my marks. When we started the game, all these marks were a hyphen. And you'll notice that these hyphens are going away. And so if it does not contain any hyphens, you can see there's still one there. So if it does not's in operators. If marks does not contain, there's this cool little thing, if I can find it again.
Item number of thing in marks, or
is that what I used? Oh, right here. Is it right here? Marks contains.
Marks contains.
There it is.
Yep.
Gotcha. This is like the one and only time in my whole life I've used this command. So if not marks contains, like if it, maybe it's the sentence reads better. If it does not contain, there we go. If it does not contain that, then it must be a tie game. So I'm going to go to, I'm going to hide it again because I don't like it on the screen. I'm going to set the game state here to tie game. I think that's what I said I was going to do. The game is a tie, same. I'll go with tie game. All right. Last thing. And you would think that wouldn't come up that much, but actually when humans play, it comes up all the time. Game, tie game, or game is tied, whatever you want. Cool. And where we had to put that in the code, I found that very sneaky. But if you followed my logic, that's like the moment where it happens. And so that's the place where to put that code. All right. We now have a finished tic-tac-toe game. We have done it. The winner is X. And so what I think you should do, what I recommend, is so long as you're signed in, click on share. And then people can actually come to your website now. Probably yours just called Tic-Tac-Toe. But you can take this URL and you can send it to like friends and family, and they can like see your cool Tic-Tac-Toe game. I think it's pretty neat. All right, let's bring it home with a little bit of summary of some things that we learned today, and kind of bringing it back together. So this was the game. This is the example of game states. So some things that we were hoping we'd get today is some costume switching. So like the X's and the O's and the blanks. Some conditionals. Yeah, we got conditionals. Broadcasting message. That was the screaming of, check for a win. Arrays. First time I'm sure you've ever seen arrays. And applying some pretty complex logic. Bob, you want to take this side and kind of summarize this some more?
I'm not sure there's much to summarize. I think the thing that we saw at play here was how if you can take a lot of programs, a lot of systems, you may recall us talking about state machines and thinking about the state of a particular program. In this case, we thought about the state of each individual position. And once we thought through what that position would do, it gave us an opportunity to get that code perfect, and then a lot of the coding was just tedious. Copy, paste, edit, copy, paste, edit. Dave was doing that for about 5 minutes. You all were doing it for probably at least 5 minutes. And then once all those things were in place, there was further tedium with trying to think about every combination that would result in a win. And it turns out our brains do that very, very quickly. When we look at a tic-tac-toe board, we can see 3 in a row, and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to go, is it 1, 2, 3? Is it 4, 5, 6? Is it 7, 8, 9? Is it 1, 4, 7? You don't have to go through all 8 combinations. Your eyes can see patterns like that. And the way code works is you have to be pretty tedious. You have to spell out each possible way that something can happen. So just because your brain does something in a certain way doesn't always mean that you can turn it into code in that same way. You need to think how the computer thinks to be able to write good code.
Cool. And then the last thing I'll close you with is we talked about how we could have done this with clones. Here was that promised example to where you can kind of see inside. So this is the exact same game, but with only 1 mark. And it was just a little bit harder to make, so we decided to skip it. But the problem is that you can make a clone of it, but then you've got to use some formula to position it. And so really it was this formula that I was afraid of, because whenever you run it, you can see that it just makes them and puts them all in a right spot. If you're curious about how to do that, you can go look at it. The other thing that was tricky is that a mark had to know its own index, which was kind of funny, so I had to set like my index to that. So we decided not to do that for our video. But if you're like serious coder, you would probably want to do the version that had clones in it. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We will be back again next time with these games. The next game is going to be called Linear Lights Out. We hope you come see us then. All right.
Yeah, it's a fun one. See you soon.
Bye.